So this is actually in Sutta number 22 in the Majjhima Nikaya. And it's the simile of the snake. And it also has the simile of the raft, which is kind of advanced for most people. What to do with the Dhamma after you've crossed the shore.
Sounds
But
like
in there is this place where the, pardon?
sounds like a nice problem to have.
So um, this this accusation that was done about the Buddha was an accusation that he taught annihilationism, the annihilation of an existing soul. But he says, no, both formerly and now I teach only one thing, and that is dukkha, dukkha, nirodha. This is where that famous quote comes from. So, looking at it from the point that he was not accused of being an eternalist. He was accused of being an annihilationist. But his real teaching is, no, whatever you think is going to be annihilated at the breakup of the body is actually annihilated every minute. It comes and it goes. It's up and down. And that people can have kind of a favorite, but according to Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and many other references, even people who are hardcore into greed or hardcore into anger are still not doing it all the time. They can come home and kiss their wife. You know, they can come back and be a little bit human from time to time. If they didn't, they'd X themselves. They really would.
Hitler was famously very kind to his dogs, etc. Very gentle with them.
And so everyone has both good and bad aspects. But here as Dhamma dudes, we're learning that, wait a minute, these bad aspects that each one of us has actually is painful for the individual, even more so than it is with the people that are around him. But that he also has an effect upon, because unfortunately, not all, let's use the term bodhisattva, or all seekers are constantly around fully enlightened Buddhas. That most bodhisattvas are around a lot of people who are petty, who are in pain, and who put their feelings out there for you to step on or not and make it your responsibility. So if we understand that we're actually causing pain to people, it's not because necessarily of their ignorance. Yes, it might be. But are we going to be ignorant because they are? No, we're going to wake up and see, oh, that's painful for them, and so I'm not going to do that. And so we can treat others with kindness. We don't have to step on broken feet. And so this is part of that learning of the altruism, so that we can begin to apply it all over the place. But let's get back to what we were talking about in the sense of getting into these very rarefied states. And then you said, can you live your life like that? And my answer was a flat no. All right. I had a conversation many years ago on the internet with someone who was telling a story about a teacher and a student driving the car. And while the teacher, I think, maybe had been driving the car, this student was talking about going in and out of various states of jhanas. And that my answer to that was, listen, if you are driving a car in the fourth jhana, I hope the police stop you and charge you with DWJ, because you are a danger out on this road. You need to know when and where and how to practice being in that state, because basically you've shut down so much of what's going on that your daughters literally can sneak up on you because you're not paying any attention. That's the problem with the high jhanas, is that it shuts things down to where the first jhana is really opening up the frontal cortex.
I get that. I suppose my question was more or less to do with the state of absorption and the rarefied consciousness, and more to do with the letting go of self? I mean, maybe it's the same thing. Maybe, you know.
One develops the habit of the other.
Yes.
So if you're in fact in rarefied states where there is no self there that can be discerned, and you can see that, as opposed to making the mistake of the witness is the self, which is
Yes.
something that many of the jhana dudes do. They make that mistake. But no, you're not that either. You may be the witness, but what you're witnessing is how all of that stuff is put together and how it makes crap sometimes, so that we can stop making the crap. So now when we come out of jhana, the landing point or the safety net is in that going to be back into first jhana, not all the way into ordinary mind. That was what the problem was with the jhana dudes, is when they come out of it, they're back into ordinary normal suffering. They haven't really learned anything other than how to put the mind in a particular state. To where practicing and working with the first jhana gives us the ability to really see things deeply through conceptualizations.
Mm-hmm.
And we begin to understand how things, and we put the world together in a way that makes really happy, perfect sense, as opposed to the way that we had been putting it together based upon ignorance and instinct.
So then it's like a conceptual choice then when you're in that place in daily life to then go, in meditation, when one lets go of the sense of self to a certain extent, one feels bliss and joy and there is no suffering. And you know that conceptually, so you choose to conceptualize and view reality with like through that lens, but you're doing it on the
Yes. And what I'm saying, it is also begins to come more automatic.
Yes.
So every opportunity that comes up, we naturally, because we've already got the new effort put into it, to take the high road.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we begin to start having the habit of, let's take the high road and not the low road.
And then the more we practice that, the more likely we're going to be able to do that when the shit hits the fan and it's actually tough. And in those situations when we normally retreat back to that painful
Exactly.
self, we stand a better chance of not not doing that. Right?
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
It may not be the what you said gets in the fan. It may be a finger.
Yeah.
Which has the same quality to it. Oh, my finger. Or my fan. What'd you do with my fan? Because that's the way that people generally look at it, is my fan, and what did you do to my fan? Because we're always looking for putting the blame, or what the wrong is on someone else. That the really important quality is that self responsibility gets really buried deep, so that blaming someone else is not the natural thing that pops up. It will be, in fact, well, I'm the lion here. I'm one that's responsible, and then we have new choices to kind of make to it.
So that, which is also it's interesting because the language there is like self-responsibility, yet it's actually a letting go of self, because it's not going, there's a self over there who hurt this self over here. Instead, it's saying
partly it has to do with language.
But yeah, but it's a bit like.
But there is also the point about responsibility to the bigger we.
Yes.
All right. When I say I'm, self-responsibility, that means the responsibility is not just to the little self we or mu, but the bigger one. Everyone, like when we were talking about the coronavirus, that the ones who were really selfish can only see it from their own personal perspective of responsibility. Oh, I'm okay. I can get away with it. Is that wrong view? But now we've got a higher view that encompasses more people. And so we begin to look at it in the sense of, I'm just a part of humanity. An example of that that's actually quite close to home. So long as I'm a budding meditation teacher trying to make a name for myself out on the internet, I'm seeing it from a selfish perspective. Once established, now that teacher is going to say, well, let's communicate and become friends with other teachers so that they don't have to go through that uh, pain of trying to get established using selfishness and conceit and wanting money and all of that kind of stuff in the process. Okay, so now we're looking at it completely from a different point of view of teaching the Dhamma, rather than how can I teach the Dhamma, into merely how can the Dhamma spread, because that's really the intention. Not the me who teaches it, but that it's getting out there, that there's no self in there. This is literally what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa is talking about when he says there is no Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, or that there is nothing to die. On the breakup of the body, you have the breakup of the body. While the body is breaking up, you can either enjoy it or not, up to you. But once the body is broken up, sorry, it's all gone now. There is no existing self to be annihilated. That whatever self is existing in that moment was newly created to handle the death itself.
And is itself not a complete separate entity because it is made up of aggregates which themselves come and go within that sense of self?
That can actually be seen then in the last voice or the last thing that someone says. This, and in fact, in the old days of jurisprudence, the last thing that someone said was generally admissible into court because it was that important or powerful. So if someone confessed on their deathbed, then that was a really powerful confession. Or if you blame somebody like, go get Joe, he shot me, and then croak, okay, Joe's going to go to prison.
Yeah.
Because that was a deathbed accusation, and that counts as if it were right there in court. All right. Another good example would be, I'll see you in hell. Now, how selfish is that? Okay. This is, in fact, the revenge that many murderers want. Just before they kill somebody, they want to get that revenge out of it. They really want to take it out on the person. I'm killing you because you done me wrong. And so there's a whole lot of selfishness involved with all of that. But when we can really let go, then we can do something like, well, one more breath. Well, maybe not. Well, a smile will do, and toodaloo. And we're ready to check out. Because when people are resisting death, even while they're dying, that's a really terrible mental state to have a last thought in, or I'll see you in hell, full of hatred. Or trying to get back at the guy who did you in, like Mo shot me or something like that. So this is normal. This is the normal way that people live their lives, out of fear and whatnot. But if we're completely ready to go, if we're completely ready to die, then we accept death happily.
And that's a gift, isn't it, for everyone around you, because you will lessen their fear. I feel like responsibility as a parent that recently my brother-in-law's father died, and it was a very terrible, in the sense that he was angry, scared, petrified, for the last few months. And the effect
fear of death will do that to old dudes.
Yes, but the effect that had on his children, I think, is really quite disturbing for them. So, kind of like part of parental responsibility is kind of making sure that when that time comes, you are able to do it in a way that is not going to just do that to your children. That in fact it'll fill them with the opposite, with like love and optimism and the ability to go.
And so you can see what an altruistic way of going out is, going out with love and going out with caring and affection for those who have to put up with having to continue to live. I mean, I've got my ticket out. Bye-bye. You're the one who has to stay in this jail, this prison of life. I'm out of here. Toodaloo. So that's the kind of right attitude that has no self built in it. The self is always in the sense of contraction or fear or whatever. But open acceptance of death then is going to help everybody around.
Mm.
But now, if you can figure out that you can, in fact, handle your own death, wow, that's a really good step in the Dhamma direction. That kind of means that you've come to the conclusion you can handle anything. If you can handle your own death, wow, that means I can handle any situation.
Mm.
I can even smile and joke with the police while they're arresting me and hauling me off. Or I can joke with the surgeon just before he puts me under. That's the way to go, you know. It doesn't matter how much the dukkha is or how much we're piling on to the mind or what obstruction. We can get out of it. We know we can.
Mm.
No matter how much trouble it has. And this is a really strong position to take. This is why the Buddha says this is the first step on the noble path, that no matter how obstructed the mind gets, because it will, sometimes we'll forget. But when we wake up and say, oh, I'm out of here, or I can do this.
Mm.
No matter how obstructed the mind is, I can unfurl it. I can pull it apart. I can come back to this present moment and become non-selfish.
Mm.
So an example, this month Social Security missed the check. It's supposed to be there on the 3rd. I checked the other account and Kitty's check came in on time, but the one to Thailand, so I wasn't so worried. Now, if neither one of the checks would come in, I would say, Donald Trump, I want a piece of you. But you can see how that kind of mentality gets stuck in there, blaming someone else. But the answer to it is that I finally showed the phone to Tam, and the money had arrived in the account, and I didn't even know it. I wasn't worried enough about it to even check to see if the money had come in, but it had. It did come in, but it's not an issue. It's not important. It's not me. So if it's late, there's nothing to worry about.
Mm.
And if it got stopped somehow, there was a clog in the works, then I can still happily write an email to the Social Security and figure out what happened or whatever what's going on. And even if I don't ever get paid again, I'm still okay.
Mm.
That I am not that Social Security payment.
Mm.
Okay. So this is the kind of way that we begin to recognize that I'm not this and I'm not that, and it doesn't matter. I mean, even losing the source of income is not going to pull me out of a good state.
Mm.
And yet look at how many people normally, when they lose their income, they're just going to simply freak out.
Mm. Well, a lot of people are having the opportunity to practice.
Wish they would. This is such a marvelous opportunity. What my thinking is that if especially in the United States, they open too soon, things go really, really south, and everybody figures it out. That sometimes these rednecks need to lose their own grandmother before they finally come to the point of saying, "Holy crap, we all got to do something about this."
Mm.
But that point is going to come. The question is, how many months from now?
Mm.
While all of these chilled Democrats are saying, maybe I don't even have to go back to work. I'm having a pretty good life right now.
Yeah. Or maybe when I do go back to work, it should be, it doesn't have to be like it was last time. It doesn't have to be.
Exactly. Now that we've learned to chill, maybe we can take that and keep it going.
Yeah.
And so I see great things. I mean, you know yourself. Look at the air in London. Wow, what a nice thing that's happened. Get those cars off the roads.
Yeah.
get those planes out of the air. So this is really a marvelous opportunity, and I think that a whole lot of people are going to be waking up about this. That let's start living our lives unselfishly, and start living our lives altruistically, and just that kind of an attitude change is what gets people on the spiritual path.
Mm.
Just begin to change. Wait a minute, we're doing something wrong here. All of this greed is just polluting the world, polluting the environment, polluting our minds, making us all unhappy and miserable. We've got all of the technology we could possibly want or hope for, especially thinking about um, just as late as 1990. The average cell phone today has more equipment on it than a whole room full of furniture equipment in the 1990s,
Mm.
with a reel-to-reel tape recorder and a great big television set and a VCR and just keep adding. And you got to have big speakers. Well, now the little speakers here have a tiny little, very powerful magnet, which
Mm.
means that you can get very good reception out of headphones that are not outrageously expensive. Used to, a good headphone was huge because it had to house a big magnet,
Mm.
but big speakers, okay? But so all of this technology has come together. So a whole room full of stuff that would cost thousands of dollars now is only a couple of $100 for
Mm.
the whole show. And you've got internet connection.
Mm.
1990, you had all of that thousands and thousands of dollars of technology. Okay. So from that mentality, even in 1990, I could still make the same statement. We've got enough stuff.
Mm.
In 1990, we had enough stuff. Now in the year 2000, only 30 years later, we've got all our stuff, but now we can put all our stuff in our hip pocket. So
Mm.
we certainly have all the stuff we need,
Mm.
and yet we have all of this greed. Why is all that greed there? Because of the habit of greed.
Mm.
And the habit of greed is based in the habit of selfishness. Isn't that amazing?
Mm.
That we've got all of the technology we need, and yet we still want more and more and more and more. And things will continue to evolve, and things are going in the right direction as far as technology. But what we needed was a major interrupt on the path that we were going, and Corona 19 has provided world class, literally, interruption.
Yeah.
This Western capitalistic greed system that we've been so bad at building. It's built on lies, deception, manipulating people's feelings, and people letting themselves be manipulated by their feelings rather than really taking a look at what's going on.
Mm.
And so I'm extremely joyful about what the humanity's possibility of. And all I can say about it is, wakey, wakey. Wake up out of selfishness and wake up into we're all a part of this big mix.
Mm.
And that big mix still has its own kind of a self. And when we're in that mix, it's almost like this. Think about a loaf of bread, or let us say a cake that you bake at home.
Mm.
All right. Before you bake it, you've got eggs and you've got milk and you've got flour and you've got sugar and maybe some special ingredients. But after the cake is put together and baked, where is the wheat? Where is the eggs? Where is the milk? The answer is here they are. They're right there in the cake, but they've changed form completely.
Mm.
And so when we join an organization, we actually literally stop being an egg and start being part of a loaf.
Mm.
We have to give up our own individual self in order to do that. This is one of the best benefits of the historic Christian church, was that it taught people to be altruistic and to
Mm.
go help one another. But
Mm.
the modern Christian church is very, very selfish now.
Mm. Yeah, it depends. That can what the process you described of going from an egg to a loaf. Positive thing entirely depends on the loaf, doesn't it? Because if you're losing your individual sense of self in order to be subsumed within a kind of angry, violent,
Like
large
you,
entity.
like our conversation about, are you going to go stay in the environment where you find it where everybody's cooperating, or are you going to be a broken egg in a university of competition?
Yeah.
And so we really are affected by our environment in that way. That we really do lose our eggness, even though we insist that, oh no, I'm still an egg. I'm still a me in this loaf of bread. Well, no, when you're in the loaf of bread, you're not an egg.
Mm.
And so we have to understand that we're a part of a big whole.
Mm.
This is part of the quality of language that you see in Vedanta and in some religions about thou art that.
Mm-hmm.
Or I am that I am in a big, big sense. And that we're part of that. That you are literally God.
Mm-hmm.
You're at least a big part of God. The part that looks and sees and things from your end of the stick, you know, there you are. But we don't recognize that godliness because that's lion, that's power, that's a feeling of integrity, that's the unified mind. Most people don't have that kind of a self. They have the self that is that's weak, that needs protection, that's a victim, that is manipulated by fear. And so both of those can use the word self, but we're talking about a real big transformation in a human being, coming out of the little selfishness into becoming the big self, the one who is, in fact, willing to take on the responsibility, say, of the coronavirus.
Mm.
Donald Trump is not up to that altruistic taking over.
Mm.
He's not presidential, and we need a president that can do that, who can be non-selfish long enough to really begin to help some people.
Mm.
And until that happens, we're going to continue to have a big mess. Hopefully, Joe Biden doesn't make quite the same mistakes as Donald Trump. Everybody's hoping that he doesn't, but we don't know what's going to happen yet.
Mm.
But we do know that selfishness on Donald Trump's part is not providing the altruism that is needed to solve a much bigger problem than he's aware of, nor are any of the people in his constituency. But when it starts to affect them personally, so that they can see it with the little self, then they'll start to do something. Because they don't have the understanding from compassion of being a part of humanity. So this is actually a way of looking at right view. The ordinary right view is to look down or to look at me, to look at my actions and my karma, as opposed to right noble view is to see things above that, to see things altruistically, to see humanity, not an individual me.
Mm.
And when we can grow our minds that way, literally, it's an expansion of our entire attitude.
Mm.
And you don't have to have this spiritual Buddhist enlightenment. We can see that that kind of stuff is not only possible, but it's actually needed at the political level.
Yes, it's needed on a lot of levels, isn't it?
Hopefully, the people of the world can wake up, that they've got a chance of sitting at home and figuring things out. I said, now with coronavirus, everybody is sitting at home.
Yeah.
Hopefully, sitting there long enough to begin to figure all of this out.
Yeah. Hopefully on several of those levels that we've discussed, though, as well. Hopefully on that wider societal political level, but also hopefully on that more inward, subtle level.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So let's finish this one. We've been going a couple of hours or more on this, but I think that we've got a very, very good handle now on the idea of what we mean by self and selfishness and all of that.
Yes.
Because when students really figure this out, they can recognize, wait a minute, I understand personality view now. I get it. And I
Yeah.
know that it's painful. And
Yeah.
so I should come out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a big one. Thank you very much.
All right, Matt. This has been great.
Yeah.
One last thing. Go sneak up on your kids.
Yeah, I'm going to. Go well, Dhammarato. Thank you very much.
See you.
See ya. Bye.